Jolly good. Good evening. Welcome, everybody. As the room falls silent, we must be ready to start. Welcome to this Cabinet meeting, 14th of November 2023. Start with apologies for absence. I don't think we have any. We have a full Cabinet. Thank you, everybody. Would any Cabinet member like to declare any interest on any item that's cropping up on the agenda? No? Okay, that's fine. Thank you. We have some minutes of previous meeting. This was our meeting of the 10th of October with two sets of minutes because there was both the public and indeed a private session on that meeting. Does anybody have any? Thank you, Phil. Are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you. I'll sign the minutes. Thank you very much. Chair's announcements. Just two things I was going to mention. And I mention this from time to time, just so that you know, we had a councillor who raised this today and was quite surprised. Cabinet members are not seeing these reports for the first time, nor indeed did they see them for the first time a week ago when they were published. It's part of our collective responsibility that any report that's going to come forward that is therefore published in all our names, we get every opportunity to review. Cabinet members have therefore probably had 3 or 4 opportunities to review all of these reports in advance in a series of meetings that we hold to ensure that we're fully aware. So please don't think this is the first time we've seen them or be surprised that there aren't many questions asked by other Cabinet members. Second thing I was just going to mention, particularly for those of us travelling back to Northampton, the A43 is closed between Towcester and Junction 15A at 8 o'clock. Perhaps ask you to consider that as you make your comments and keep them brief. Thank you very much indeed. Item 5, urgent business. I've not been notified of any urgent business. So let's move on then to item 6. This is reports from scrutiny, and we're looking here at the report of Adult Social Care and Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee into integrated care across Northamptonshire. That's the ICAN scrutiny review. So we're delighted to welcome the chair, Councillor Rosie Herring. Rosie, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. This report to Cabinet and its recommendations result from a task and finish group set up by the original People Overview and Scrutiny Committee. ICAN was a collaborative begun in 2019 by the NHS and the County Council to transform support for frail elderly, with particular emphasis on the discharge procedures from health to social care. An external transformation partner was appointed, Newton Europe, and as a result of their work, the system has been overhauled and new practices adopted. It was paid for primarily by the NHS funds with a modest contribution from the council. The COVID pandemic complicated the programme, obviously, and a subsequent review of outcomes. However, the scrutiny task and finish panel met 4 times to review the programme. The task and finish panel was made up of 7 councillors. Councillor Emma Roberts, who chaired the panel, Councillor Duffy, Councillor Gonzalez de Savage, Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Randall, Councillor Sharps, and myself. The panel met 4 times during 2022 and considered the performance information of the ICAN programme. We met relevant senior leaders, the ICAN delivery director, senior officers from WNC Adult Social Care, representatives of Newton Europe, and also representatives of service users to help inform its view about the practical impact of the transformation programme. The panel's report was presented to the Adult Social Care, Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 14th of September 2023. The committee agreed the recommendations to go to the Cabinet without amendment. The recommendations made to the Cabinet cover areas including the need for future services supporting independent living for frail older people to be available on a 24/7 basis, to provide for people living on the borders of the district who may have access to acute care, to give particular consideration to the transfer areas there, The development of future services should link in effectively with the new LAPS and be informed by accurate demographic data. Future services should ensure that actions to improve headline performance on length of stay in acute care do not result in worse outcomes for patients in practice or result in discharges being followed by readmissions. I would normally have said now that I would hand over to Councillor Roberts, who did chair the panel, but unfortunately she's not able to be here today. But I do hope the Cabinet will take on board the good work that was done and the recommendations that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rosie. And our thanks both to you as chair of the committee, but also particularly to Councillor Roberts, who chaired this panel. And I know she's very keen to come along and we were keen to hear from her. So we pass our best wishes on. She's suffering a family emergency she's had to deal with this evening. We have a couple of other speakers. I don't know if anybody wants to just ask any questions, perhaps that Rosie may be able to assist with. Or indeed, Matt, perhaps Stuart, do you want to make any comments, or should we take our other speakers before you do that? Yeah, great. In which case, any other comments or questions to be addressed to Rosie? No. Brilliant. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you very much. Let's move to our other speakers. We have two. It's first of all, Councillor Beardsworth. Sally, welcome. After which we've got Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Emma Roberts and the team who put this together. I have a few points that I'm probably reiterating what has already been said, but we'd like to know the cost of the programme, the ICAN programme. When I read it first, I thought I can manage on my own, but I hope it doesn't mean that. Knowing the cost of the programme, and it needs for the programme and priorities to be a way of emerging with the LAPS, I think is most important things. Also in the report, it doesn't say how many returns. And I think that's very important when you're actually doing a thing like this, because a lot of patients get dismissed from hospital and in 2 or 3 days they come back because they're not well enough to look after themselves, or something have a relapse. So it's those sort of informations we need on top of that. But a very good piece of scrutiny work done on this. And I think that's all I want to say on the matter. Thank you.
Jolly good. Thank you, Sally. And our final speaker on this one, Councillor Randall. Wendy.
I'll stay here on this one because it'll only be brief. Yes, I welcome this and thank Councillor Roberts for leading on this. It was a very good task and finish, and I look forward to hearing what the Cabinet's reply is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jolly good. Matt or Stuart, did you want to make any initial comments, Matt, perhaps?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And just to thank Councillor Herring and Councillor Roberts for the work on this on the ICAN scrutiny work. It's been a very important piece of work, and basically overall we sort of happy to agree with most of the recommendations. But having spoken to the director and cabinet colleagues, including the leader, about this, I think we ought to do your scrutiny work justice by coming back with another report to you to acknowledge the work that you did and to talk about what we think about the recommendations. There were, I think, over 10 or 11 recommendations. So we can go give a bit more of a detailed response over them. But overall, and just to answer Sally's point, the cost to us was £360,000, which was quite a small part of the overall money that went into the ICAN programme. It was over 8 million of health money put in. The question around how many people is very difficult to answer, because when we had COVID that clouded the whole period of time that you guys looked back at, but also a lot of the methodology that was put in through the implementation of the programme is still in place. So it will continue, hopefully, to bear fruit and, give good outcomes for people as they leave hospital as we move forward. But overall, I think it's been a very good piece of work. Newton Europe also helped us as a part of the ICANN programme redesign our reablement service, which is rated good by the Care Quality Commission, which is very positive. And they also had a big part to play in how we designed the REBU beds, the return independence bed units up at Turn Furlong, which is now seen as a national exemplar of some really good work. So I know there was a bit of a doubt or a question mark over the involvement of an organisation like Newton Europe, but in my view, it's my opinion that they contributed in a very positive way. So going back to the report again, thank you guys for the diligent work that you've put in. And I think if we can come back or make it a part of the process around the work you're doing on scrutiny, to come back to you with a bit more of a detailed response on all of the recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Anybody else wish to add anything at all? No? Oh, Stuart.
It's just an additional comment, really. So whilst ICANN was delivered through the pandemic, and that saw significant challenges in relation to the increase in people coming through the hospital, I think it's fair to say that if we didn't have the ICANN programme in place, we wouldn't have seen the integrated system response that we saw locally, particularly through the latter stages of the pandemic. I think had we not had that integrated response, it would be really clear that we would have seen even higher levels of demand play through for adult social care services in particular. So when we look across and provide that response to those recommendations, we'll be looking at the broader impact that ICANN has had, not just in that short-term period, but also for the future and the services and structures that it's enabled us to take forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else have any further comments or questions around this piece of work? No? Okay. In which case, the recommendations that are contained in the report are the recommendations from the panel. Those we will give proper consideration to in a formal response. That's something that we're tidying up the system on that. Last night, we met with scrutiny and noted that we had responded formally in a satisfactory way to a number of reports. That might involve Matt and Stuart bringing back a formal response for Cabinet, possibly. But in the meantime, rather than those specific recommendations, what I think we're going to ask Cabinet to do is to note the tremendous work done by the panel, to thank the panel for that, note their recommendations, and note that we will be bringing a formal response back. Can I have your agreement to that? Is that agreed? Agreed? Jolly good. Thank you very much indeed. Which takes us on to item 7. This again is with Matt. This is commissioning of the National NHS Health Check Programme for West Northamptonshire. Matt will introduce the background to this report, after which we have 2 speakers, which is Councillor Beardsworth and then Councillor Randall. So Matt, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So the Cabinet report provides summary information on the findings of the NHS Health Check Programme service evaluation carried out and options appraisal to identify the most effective service delivery model moving forward. The current NHS Health Check Programme contract commenced on the 1st of April 2015 and is due to expire on the 31st of March 2024. The service currently covers both North and West Northamptonshire areas. The providers are general practices through their respective federations and community providers that includes community pharmacies, sport organisations like Northampton Town Football Club, Community Foundation and the University of Northampton. Service evaluation finds outcome gaps and areas for improvement in the current provision. And based on the findings, the recommendation is to improve accessibility, reduce inequalities, and improve cardiovascular disease health outcomes through a collaborative approach of service delivery. The options appraisal suggests a care delivery model with an integration between general practices and community providers to coordinate seamless delivery of the NHS Health Check Programme with an outreach model to address the inequalities. This model brings in a better clinical and cost effectiveness in comparison to other options appraised. The total cost of delivering the health check is expected to be covered in the budget envelope of £350,000 per year, with a base rate per health check for all providers. Additional payment has been layered per patient for signposting to the community providers and per patient for completed health checks. There was also an incentive to meet additional costs for the follow-up cases with raised results. The budget allocation will be reviewed once the NHS digital offer is implemented and fully functioning. The aim is that this model will allow for uninterrupted delivery of the statutory service and mitigate clinical risk and wellbeing implications to the population. So cardiovascular disease prevalence across West Northamptonshire has risen and continues to rise. Also, cardiovascular diseases related mortality is higher here than the national average, which is very concerning. Uptake of the NHS health check programme in the current service provision has been low and has not met the national expectation. This is obviously not helpful to the wider system, and moving forward, service performance is something we will be keeping a very close eye on. There's further detailed background in the report, and also the report has been consulted on with 2 ICB Deputy Chief Medical Officers and General Practices, and is due to be taken to the local Medical Council and local Pharmaceutical Council. There's lots more very good detailed data and background in the options appraisal and service evaluation report, which I'll be happy to share if anybody's interested. Chair, the recommendations are outlined at point 3 of the report, of which I'm happy to commend to Cabinet, and these are to adopt and agree the recommended model of care for redesigning our service, improving access to NHS health checks for early detection of CVD diseases and preventing premature mortality due to CVD and its complications. And 2, to agree to initiate the commissioning progress for the recommended service delivery model for the NHS health check programme in West Northamptonshire for its implementation of 5 years. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Matt. That's tremendous. So 2 speakers on this. First of all is Councillor Beardsworth. Sally?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's excellent news. I think that we carry on with this service because basically prevention is much better than cure. And we know now from very early age, things can be detected, especially with genetics as well coming into it. The only thing I'd have a problem with is getting to grips with the hard to reach groups. And I must admit, men are the worst for actually going to the doctors and doing things like this. So we've really got to sort of push that out to get people to go to the doctors early enough so we can detect what's wrong with them and treat them early in stages to stop them getting worse. So I just wanted to know how you were going to implement that, how you're going to get out to hard to reach people. You have people with index of multiple deprivation, which 2 or 3 people from ethnic minority groups residing in West Northants. Those are the people that we need to reach out to and actually make sure that they attend these checkups, because that's the way we'll prevent them going into hospital or even dying early. So I think it's very important. So there was a few things on the risk register about duplication. I just wondered if you'd looked at, you've got a moderate risk and a high risk. Conflict between primary care community providers may lead to disjointed delivery of the service, leading to possible failure and poor uptake and poor health outcomes. That was one of my concerns. And also, and I had another concern as well, it's just gone out of my head, but those are the things I'm worried about. And I think sure that you've got them in line and we're dealing with them, but it's something that I also, I've remembered what I was going to say. It's so difficult now to get a GP appointment. People are going to hospital rather than actually go to their GP. So if we have a health check once a year and pick up any problems, that will alleviate that problem, I think. So carry on with the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sally. And Wendy.
Thank you. Right, so reading this report, the NHS health programme was implemented in 2009, and it was to screen for early signs of cardiovascular disease to prevent poor health outcomes. So I assume at that time, a report like this would have been come before Cabinet and they would have agreed it. But then when you read the reasons for recommendations, it's because that cardiovascular disease continues to rise. Mortality in the area is higher than the national average. Uptake was low. So that makes me think that even though you agreed a report, it wasn't being, it didn't do what it said to do on the CAN, basically. So for 6 years, it's not been formally evaluated. So what I would like reassurance is that who is going to monitor it going forward? And if the uptake again is low, will there be any money coming back? Because 350,000 over 5 years, if they only actually hit, say, 20% rather than the amount that they should be hitting, that means they've seen a lot less people, so is their clawbacks. Thank you. Oh, and the only other thing is I thought about, I know that there are different opportunities, and I wondered if in the big warehouses like Sainsbury's and different people like that, whether there could actually be a nurse that goes in site so it captures those workers at work, because I think that's where a lot of the poor intake is. People don't get time off work or can't afford to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A few points there. Just to reassure Sally about men, I had one of these medicals a while ago, picked up some tips, and I've managed to correct things. And actually a family member of mine had one, discovered a very high sugar level and has corrected that. That would have had a very serious impact. So I'm a big believer in these checks. Hey? Oh, no. Thank you. Thank you. A few points there that you might want to sweep up. So we've got Matt and we've got Sally, Director of Public Health. Did you want to chip in on some of those points?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's been a recognition that performance hasn't been what it should have been. Moving forward, this is one of our measures on the corporate scorecard, so it'll be coming to Cabinet quite regularly, so we can keep a monitor on it and welcome the challenge on, you know, how we look at performance and make sure we're getting through to people. On the point around hard to reach groups, there's also that recognition and that acknowledges that in the report that there's certainly men and certain ethnicity groups and types that we need to get through to. So we're making an extra effort to do that. In terms of getting around to workplaces, with the things like mobile vans, we're going to be promoting these in the warm welcoming spaces. I know Stuart Timmis there mentioned speaking to the Saints and people like that are interested in helping to promote this. So we've got, you know, a real lot of energy, renewed energy going into this to make sure we get through to the right people, and we're promoting these health checks as much as we possibly can. And I don't know if Sally wanted to add any further comments.
No, just to pick up Councillor Randall's point about the budget. So the budget is obviously monitored by the public health team, and we pay by results basically. So we don't, you know, the whole 350,000 doesn't go out. We pay the different organisations by results. So we'll be keeping a really tight control on that. And as Councillor Golby said, this is in the corporate scorecard. You know, so we'll be looking at performance. And you maybe also picked up from the report, there is a digital version of this due in over the next year. So we will also review, you know, our intentions around that model as well as we go forward.
Thank you. I just wanted to do one more thing, which is to thank Natasha and Anna Perner, who are sat at the back, that have put a lot of hard work into this report. Thank you.
Jolly good. Thank you, Matt. For the Cabinet, any further questions, comments at all on this one? No? Okay, thank you, everybody. In which case, Matt did direct our attention to the recommendations in section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement to those recommendations? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Takes us on to item 8. This one is with Adam. It's the West Northamptonshire Housing Allocation Scheme is the subject on that. After Adam's introduced it with 2 speakers, Councillor Beardsworth and Councillor Purser. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd remind members that by law, we must create a West Northamptonshire housing allocation scheme by the 1st of April 2024 under the directions handed down to us by the Structural Changes Order. And following 10 weeks of consultation, we now have a scheme that we're ready to propose. Broadly, the consultation responses were very positive. We had 732 responses, and around a quarter of these were from social housing tenants, which I think is a decent rate of reply from those already, from people who've already had experience of our current allocations policy. Looking through the consultation responses, there are some echoes of the debates that have been had both at scrutiny and in this chamber when we saw the draft policy. The debate around income and savings levels was one of the bigger areas of contention in consultation responses, but there was still only a minority against the proposals in that area, which again I would remind members were based on national guidelines. So following the consultation, we have made a number of changes, which are outlined in the report from section 5.26 onwards. There's some higher priority given to some small cohorts such as care leavers, armed forces personnel, and those requiring supported move on from hostels and short-term housing. Homeless households in temporary accommodation and those owed a main statutory homeless duty are also in Band A as opposed to Band B previously. And it's the same with with people currently in private rented sector properties which are suffering from Category 1 hazards such as severe damp and mould issues, to name just one example. There are some further amendments to bands B and C, which I believe are less significant, but happy to take any questions from members about the rationale behind those changes. They're largely driven by some of the expert feedback given to us by the consultant employed to help guide us through the process. And I would also highlight to members that we've made some slight changes to the qualification criteria as a result of consultation responses. A lot of the consultees did point out that some of the definitions within the housing allocation scheme were a bit too open to interpretation. So we've tightened a lot of the definitions under the scheme. And I think it's important to remember that we are, in effect, trying to manage in the fairest sense possible the allocation of a very finite resource. There will always be difficult choices to make. There will always be people who are upset by the way in which we decide to allocate this very limited resource. But in coming to the recommendations before us this evening, I think we do have a fair scheme, and I think we've probably arrived at a scheme that's as fair as possible, whilst recognising the very emotive and pressured environment that housing operates within. So the recommendations before us are that we approve the final West Northants housing allocation scheme contained in Appendix A, and secondly that we approve delegated authority to me for any minor amendments to the scheme prior to operational commencement on the 1st of April 2024. But with that, Chairman, happy to take any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adam. It's really helpful. So our two speakers then, first of all, Councillor Beardsworth. Sally, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I've read the report. It's a long report, and I think I couldn't find anything other than one thing, and maybe Councillor Brown could clarify this for me, that the exclusion from the housing register will not apply to the eligible homeless, because this could be challenged in court. That's what I've heard, but I'm not sure, so maybe you could answer that. I'm very pleased we're going with choice-based lettings. I think it's very important to let people buy into the home that they're going to have. And I would also like to be, if people cause a lot of destruction to their home when they're living in it, wanton destruction, whether they should be, penalised by making them pay for some of the places that because they just move them on and give them another home, which happens again. And it's soul destroying for the housing officers and team to do that. So I think we really need to make sure that people look after the home they're given. And if they do cause damage, then that there's some sort of penalty for that. But other than that, a very good scheme. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Bearsworth, may I just ask which section of the report you're referring to when you mentioned the exclusion from the housing register will not apply to eligible homeless? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your comments, Sally. And then Councillor Purser. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank officers for their work on this. It looks a really good piece of work. Obviously, it's been through scrutiny and consultation, so there's a lot of, and of course, the devil will be in the detail when it comes to implementing it. My concern is just what a tight schedule we've got between now and when it has to operate. And I kind of would like assurances that you've got a plan as to what needs to be done each week to actually getting it working for the 1st of April, because it seems to me a very, very tight schedule. I suppose one of the important things is that when people are allocated, the needs and rights of existing tenants and sometimes leaseholders are taken into account, so that there aren't problems when people are moved in, and that people are moved into the appropriate accommodation, so that we don't have complaints. And whether those complaints will come to this or to West Northampton Council or to the housing provider, that seems to be an issue to be thought about in terms of I'm more concerned about the implementation than this actual policy. And of course, as Councillor Brown said, it does depend on the availability of houses. I mean, one of my residents who's in temporary accommodation in my ward has been there in very unsatisfactory accommodation with 4 children for 12 months, having to take her children to a primary school right on the other side of town. And that seems a really difficult. So I suppose really what I'm arguing is we've got to carry on working at this. It's no good having a really good allocation policy if we haven't got any houses to allocate. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Bob. I think we'd agree with all those comments. Adam, did you want to comment back on some of those things?
Yeah, certainly. So just in terms of the clarification that Councillor Bearsworth was seeking, I think that was covered off by the point I raised about homeless households owed a main statutory homeless duty now being in Band A rather than Band B. But if I've misinterpreted her remark, I'm very happy to offer a further clarification after the meeting. But certainly within the allocation scheme, people suffering from homelessness are catered for. Furthermore, Councillor Bearsworth made the point about people looking after the home that they're given, and built into the housing allocation scheme, there are penalties for inappropriate behaviour in the allocated accommodation. So again, I think we have covered that within this scheme. Moving on to Councillor Purser's comments, I would echo very loudly his thanks to officers who have put together this scheme. It's been a significant piece of work. You can see that from the sheer length of the report that we've got in front of us this evening. I think the officers that I work with feel the sense of duty that they have to people on the housing register very keenly, and they've strived to put together as fair a scheme as possible. There are concerns over the tight schedule, which is why we've got contingency plans in place should timelines slip at all. So we're working with NPH to ensure that they're still able to deliver their service to us in terms of housing allocations. Should anything not go to plan during that process. So we're confident on that front. We've built that into the programme that's ahead of us. And he also raised the point about appropriate accommodation. The housing allocations team do take every possible step to offer accommodation that's appropriate, both for the people on the register and for neighbours. We are limited in our room for manoeuvre because of the supply side issues. That's an inescapable fact. But where there is room for manoeuvre, we use it. In terms of the very sad case of the family who have been in temporary accommodation for 12 months, I think that only adds to the positive nature of the fact that we've moved such applicants from Band B to Band A under the scheme that we're considering tonight. There's a huge piece of work being undertaken at this very moment by the housing team to improve the situation with temporary accommodation, both in terms of quality and accessibility. But of course, temporary accommodation should be just that, temporary. We want to move people into affordable and permanent housing as soon as possible. But at the very end of tonight's agenda, we have a paper in front of us that shows the willingness and the ambition this council has to take advantage of any opportunity that comes our way to create extra housing. So hopefully that will be met with unanimous support by friends across the aisle. So with that, Chairman, I think we can move to the recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Adam, any further comments or questions from Cabinet? No? Okay, that's great. Adam has drawn our attention to the recommendations, which is always at section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you. Takes us on to item 9. This one is with Councillor Fiona Baker, Northamptonshire Corporate Parenting Board Annual Report. Following Fiona's introduction, with 3 speakers, Councillors Beardsworth, Purser and Randall. So Fiona, over to you.
This annual Corporate Parenting Board report is to provide the Cabinet with an overview of the Northamptonshire Corporate Parenting Board, which covers all areas of care experienced young people. Local authorities and their partners are responsible for ensuring that care experienced children and young people are as safe and well cared for as any other child. A responsibility here in the West we take very seriously. This responsibility is called corporate parenting and applies equally to children who have entered the UK from overseas and are separated from their families. Corporate parents have specific duties, including for young people leaving care and making the journey into independence. The annual report sets out the role, structure, and activity of Corporate Parenting Board, including progress achieved against the NCT Improvement Plan and Corporate Parenting Strategy. The report covers North and West, as 22-23 there was a shared Corporate Parenting Board. The annual report provides an overview of the board, its duties, its activities, as well as priorities for the coming year. In April 2023, the Corporate Parenting Board separated, and West now have their own board, enabling us to focus on our corporate parenting responsibilities for the children in the West Northamptonshire who are thought of as our own children. It's recommended that the Cabinet note the content of the Northamptonshire Corporate Parenting Board annual report that gives an overview of the Corporate Parenting Board and its oversight, challenges and activities. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fiona. So to our speakers, Councillor Beardsworth first. Sally.
Thank you very much, Chair. As I say, I've only just joined the Corporate Parenting Board, so this was a year before I joined. And I was always concerned because I was on the Corporate Parenting Board before it went to the Children's Trust. And I must admit, I think we had more to do with the children then than we do now. And that's my biggest regret, really, that I don't have a chance to speak to individual children to find out if they're happy, if what we're doing for them on the trust is working for them, is, you know, those sort of questions that they can be honest and open with us as a parenting board. But I'm hoping that will come. I've only been on it a short time. I'm hoping that will be there. But I've had dealings with social workers who don't want to talk to me about things because it's data protection, and it's very difficult to find out what sort of service we're giving these children other than what we're being told. And I would like more evidence-based stuff and actually to talk to some of the children involved in care. And that's my plea really for the future, if we could do that, to find out whether the service is going well for them, whether they feel happy and content in their foster home or care home, or whatever. But at the moment, I feel as though we're too far removed from them. And that's a real problem for me, because we still have a statutory duty as corporate parents, as you know. And I think it's important that we, you know, are understanding, because when we did reports in the past, we found children were being moved from one foster carer to another with their clothes bundled and their belongings into black plastic bags. Well, that was changed because we gave them a set of suitcases, but we just don't know what is happening to these children because we have no way of finding out, and nobody seems to want to tell us. So I do feel a bit, it's a good meeting. We get reports, but we don't get any sort of personal data. That's what I'm more concerned about. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Sally. Councillor Purser, Bob?
Thank you, Chair. I think we welcome very much that we've got a West Northants board now, because that will enable better integration of the work of the Children's Trust with the services of the local authority. And I think that's the key direction we've got to drive, so that we have really joined up services and we get the benefits of this expertise of the Trust and the specialist services that we provide within West Northants. And hopefully the group working on care leaving is showing some of the benefits of doing that. So that, I hope, is the right way to be going. We've clearly got to improve our work with foster carers in terms of how we support them and have more of them, and they've got to feel more valued. But that's a challenge for us, I think. There's an issue of exclusions, which I've talked about at previous cabinet meetings, and I think the issue of the virtual school and how we deal with exclusions is a real challenge for us. And I think we've all got to think about how we deal with that. I'm concerned about the issue of health assessments. That seems to have been going on every year since New West Northants has been around. So how are we going to improve to ensure that children have their health and have access to dentistry? It's a vital service for children, is dentistry. So I'm bothered about that comes up. I won't talk at length about it, but and I suppose the challenge in this report is how do we make, which comes up in the report, is how does the board become more involved with its young people? And we don't seem to have got there yet. And I think that is a challenge for us. It would be good to know how we're going to meet that challenge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Bob. And finally, Councillor Randall, Wendy? You're happy? Okay, thank you very much. So some great comments made there. Let's go back to Fiona, and we've got Rebecca, Director of Children's Services, with us too. Any of those that you want to pick up on?
Yes, I do, Chairman. Thank you very much. I do share Councillor Purser's concerned about all of these things, which I'm sure we all do as corporate parents. And at the moment, we are focusing as a priority on the exclusions, because we do know that these young people are more vulnerable to land into the gangs and various other areas of things we don't want them to land into. They're much more vulnerable than our everyday children. So we're focusing on that at the moment. And I just want to say also that to separate the corporate parenting board was quite a big piece of work that Rebecca Wiltshire, our DCS, and I undertook through a huge amount of challenge and opposition, because I did know, as you know, Leader, that I felt that as West Northants Council, we wanted to be responsible and look after our own children and know exactly what they're doing. And just following on from Councillor Beardsworth's comments, I think she may have missed the email that we sent out some time ago with all the events that the young people are holding throughout the year, and the opportunity for corporate parents on our board to visit any of them. I did send the email out and say, please let me know what dates you'd like to attend. We didn't actually get any replies, so we will send it out again tomorrow.
That's great. Thank you. Any further comments to sweep up there, or observations? No, okay, that's great. Do Cabinet have any queries or points that they'd like to raise on this? No, Fiona kindly directed our attention to the recommendations, which also includes that we are recommending the report is taken to the full council meeting for their consideration too. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 10. This is with Phil, Councillor Larratt. It's resources and waste strategy for West Northamptonshire. After Phil has introduced this report, we have three speakers, Councillor Harris, Councillor Beardsworth and Councillor Randall. So Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this report is to secure Cabinet's agreement for the new resources and waste strategy for West Northamptonshire, and to note the associated action plan, which will facilitate the implementation of the strategy. It is essential for the council to have a vision for waste services, which will ensure that as existing arrangements expires, we can procure and implement new arrangements that are consistent with that vision. The strategy before you tonight has been developed by officers working in association with a cross-party members working group with input from independent external technical experts. There has been public consultation, and the results from the public consultation to gather residents' and stakeholders' opinions on the vision for waste management in West Northamptonshire have been used to tailor the strategy to ensure it reflects our residents' priorities. This strategy provides a set of 10 principles that can be found on page para 5.8 of the report to guide decisions regarding replacement arrangements and help deliver sustainable and effective waste services. Mr. Chairman, some members will be aware that DEFRA have recently made a long-awaited announcement regarding simpler recycling. We believe the approach that we have taken with the West Northampton strategy to work with a set of principles when considering changes to services is flexible and will allow the council to ensure it remains compliant with any statutory guidance that DEFRA publishes. This resources and waste strategy is also consistent with other corporate strategies, such as the sustainability strategy, and will help deliver some of the outcomes. The strategy, Mr. Chairman, includes an action plan, which will be reviewed annually. Any proposals to make significant changes to the service delivery will, of course, be the subject of future consultations with a formal decision taken by Cabinet where required. So in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I simply ask that you approve this new resources and waste strategy for West Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Phil. Let's go to our speakers then. Three speakers here. First of all, Councillor Harris. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, councillors. Just a quick caveat from me. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the members' briefing the other evening due to a previous commitment. So please bear that in mind in terms of my comments. These comments would have been shared on that occasion, I'm sure, had I been there. I would like to just make one quick observation. It would have been really helpful and useful if this paper had come to the sustainability group. The maintenance and construction strategy papers, which actually the next item on the agenda did, and I think it's just something to bear in mind following our motion from the last full council meeting. That group is there for a reason, and it would just be good to keep these things funneling through if we can. It's worth mentioning that we had much debate at the last sustainability meeting about something called the Council Climate Action Scorecard. And in fact, on waste, West Northampton scores extremely well. It's very, very highly rated and scored. And I think that's something we should recognise, but also recognise it gives us a platform potentially to build on even further as we move forward. I'm really pleased to see that the strategy refers specifically to prioritising waste reduction, reuse and recycling, and the fact that it refers to a circular economy. And I think the cost of living that we're all seeing and experiencing has to some extent accelerated that, but potentially it'd be good to keep the momentum behind that. I think it will be helpful potentially to think about how we might include repurpose and repair potentially in the strategy for the future also. There are many examples of councils who are creating such things as library of things to enable people to borrow pieces of kit rather than people having to just buy something for a specific job and throwing it away. So an idea I think that we could potentially explore. A plea also to consider how we use HWRCs to take in some of the materials that we can't currently place in the bins. I have raised this before, soft plastics, blister packs, inkjet cartridges and so on. Welford have been doing this for some time, but their challenge is they have to take it to many different points. If we could find a way of incorporating that into a HWRC, I think we could potentially see others, more villages take up that option of doing so. One quick observation, 5.8.9 refers to carbon emissions. I'm not sure whether we're talking carbon emissions or CO2 equivalent here, because obviously we have got methane and nitrous oxide, I suspect, in the mix. So it might just be something to include in the glossary for clarification. It doesn't refer to the definition of carbon emissions at any point in the report that I can see. A couple of other quick points, if I may. Transparency of disposal, I think, is still key. Lots of residents watch TV reports quite regularly that still show a lot of waste offshoring. And I think it would be really good to show transparency all the way down the line for everything that we do within West Northampton, where it moves to. And the final point is focus should be minimised landfill, which is exactly what the strategy says. We need to remember that Scope 3 emissions does include anything that goes into landfill from the council's side of things. In our emissions report already, we've got an annual figure of 3,795 tonnes based on the closed landfill sites that we've got no option but to just deal with because they're already there. So the more that we can minimise that, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Jonathan. Councillor Beardsworth, Sally.
I'm on the cross-party working group, so I'll take my things directly to that. So
great. Thank you very much. Councillor Randall, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my main question really was when we're going to pull all these services together. Obviously, over in Daventry, we've got a 3 weekly collection on our general waste. And I did think that we would be aligned together. So I'd be looking forward to us all going to 3 weekly collections. But it does say on 6.2, although that could be on a 3, but it says, for example, whether the waste fleet of vehicles should switch to an alternative fuel, or whether 3 weekly collections should be implemented across West Northamptonshire. Does that mean, I got a bit confused with that. So does that mean we are looking at 3 weekly collections across West Northamptonshire, or we are looking at changing the fleets to fuel, or have we not got time to do either? So just a bit confused about that one really. And I'm thinking if we don't go to a 3 weekly collection service across West Northamptonshire, does that mean that the old Daventry district residents will then resort back to having a 2 weekly collection? And what impact will that have on costs? Because at the moment that means that their rounds will be more frequent. That means there'll be more fuel in the lorries, which means, I gather, council tax increase. Because somebody's got to pay for it, so I assume that residents will.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for all those points from everybody. I think on that latter, harmonising contracts is about the huge cost to the taxpayer, isn't it? And possibly some regulation coming on frequency of collections. Phil, did you want to sweep up some of those points, possibly Stuart as well?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure you heard the request for the sustainability group to look at this, and as chair of that, I'm sure you'll consider it.
We will do.
But I thank Jonathan for his comments. I think make an interesting point about household waste recycling centres. I think we do need to look closely at what we can and do, and as that develops as well, because technology is changing and we can move forward. We are actually starting to procure those contracts, a new household waste and recycling contract, and the working group that's been overseeing this work, the strategy, will continue and help inform the procurement process. So there will still be that engagement, and obviously members can influence it through that. I think it's a comprehensive, flexible strategy that I'm pleased to propose. And just coming on to the points Wendy made, particularly about the 3 weekly collection, I did refer to the recent DEFRA announcement. It appears that DEFRA are mindful to require fortnightly collections, so it may well be that Daventry will have to go back to fortnightly collections if that is the guideline that eventually gets issued by DEFRA. Obviously, we've got to be compliant, but we'll have to wait and see on that. And I think that if that does happen, there will be money that comes with it to accommodate the cost. But it is something that we are concerned about. It won't come through, I believe, until 2026 is what I was told. So that will be an issue for us then. But in the meantime, further consultation by DEFRA will take place. But as I say, they're mindful to require 2 weekly collections. Let's wait and see, but we'll do what we can. Thank you.
Great.
Chair.
Thank you. Stuart, you wanted to add a couple of points to that?
If that's all right, Phil. Yeah, just picking up a few points and adding to what Councillor Larratt has identified. And again, thank Councillor Harris for his observations in terms of how well, in terms of the performance of waste, we are quite proud of the rates and the recycling that we're actually able to achieve. And I think we go over and above many other of our neighbours in terms of authority and in terms of what we do, reuse, recycle, etc. Just a couple of points. The reuse, repurpose and repair and library are actually included in the action plan. So again, more than happy to pick that up with Councillor Harris following this and talk about that in more detail. The members' workshops that we had last week, they'll be repeated on a regular basis. So there'll be opportunities for all members to have that regular update. And at those meetings, more than happy to pick up on the transparency and the offshoring element, of which there is none within West Northants, as I think Councillor Harris may be aware of. But you're right, that we need to be out and open about, that we do take that very seriously as we go forward. In terms of the Councillor Randall's 2 issues she raises, I think those were examples of things that we would build business cases for as we move forward. So the strategy points to direction, but there's still work to do as Councillor Larratt has identified in terms of the harmonisation of waste. And yes, we do need to be mindful of the DEFRA, but equally we will build a business case that shows the value for money and the best service for residents as we go forward. And again, the types of fuel we use is another decision that we have to make. So we will make those decisions following business cases as they are developed as we go forward. I think that picks up all of the points, Chair. Thank you. Thank you.
Jolly good. Thank you. Any further comments, questions at all from anybody on the cabinet? No, okay, in which case, as always, the recommendation at section 3 of the recommendation is it recommended that Cabinet approve the resources and waste strategy. Can you confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, takes us on to item 11. This is the estate and construction and maintenance climate strategies. So 2 new strategies here. I'll do a brief introduction on these. We've then 4 speakers. First is a public speaker, Oriane Neroid, then Councillor Harris, Councillor Randall and Councillor McCord. So really delighted and very proud actually that we're bringing these forward as part of our ongoing sustainability work, which we're putting tremendous focus on and seeing a decent amount of progress. Very grateful, as Councillor Harris mentioned, to the cross-party working group that works very collaboratively on these issues and oversee everything that both the sustainability team and the wider council are doing. And as Jonathan Harris has said, Councillor Harris has said, have reviewed these strategies. What we're seeking is approval for strategies that's setting out the council's approach to delivering net zero in the operation of its estate and in the construction and maintenance activity area. Council has declared, of course, a climate emergency. We've set ourselves stretching goals in achieving net zero in our own operations by 2030. So as such, we need to address net zero in the operation of our estate and in the construction and maintenance activities. We've therefore got 2 strategies that have been produced dealing with the different issues these areas of activity raise. The estate climate strategy is focused on efficiency in energy use and on production of renewable energy, whereas the construction and maintenance climate strategy is focused on understanding and reducing emissions from construction materials and operations. Common to the strategies are the arrangements for dealing with residual emissions in ways which we seek to secure multiple benefits. So the strategies don't form detailed business cases in themselves, justifying particular budgets or whatever. Rather, what they provide is clear direction as these activities are undertaken throughout the organisation. Wherever possible, the focus is on saving emissions in ways which also save money or cause the council to make money, as may be the case with solar electricity. The content of each estate climate strategy, you'll see this has contents that deal, first of all, by setting out our current carbon emissions, the current situation. They deal with our estate energy usage, talk about how we're looking to optimize our estate, carbon saving or emission saving opportunities, decarbonisation reports setting out our emissions and so on. Some of the decarbonisation interventions that we are undertaking, which is building lighting upgrade to LED, street light upgrade to LED, dealing with decarbonisation on heating. Many of these activities are already underway. You'll remember the Leisure Centre decarbonisation report recently. Small scale renewable systems, large scale photovoltaic systems, grown biofuels, tree planting and so on. Quick summary of the construction and maintenance climate strategy that has a wide variety of different things. Talks about how we're going to address carbon in construction, achieving net zero in our construction, taking a low carbon approach, both through low carbon design and delivery, but also through the selection of materials, low carbon beneficial materials, and indeed local material supply, including local timber supply. It then deals specifically with one of our large areas of construction and property management, which of course is the 12,000 homes owned by Northampton Partnership Homes and the new homes being developed. In addition, it looks at specific issues for highways and our approach to highways. That's a very quick summary. We'll bring in our speakers shortly. Just to finally thank all the officers who brought this report through. Most particularly, I'd like to thank the hard work of Simon Bowers, who's put a lot of effort into bringing forward this excellent report with 2 excellent strategies. So we'll go, if we can, now to our 4 speakers. And first of all, we welcome our public speaker, Oriane. Oriane, please come forward. Press the button on the microphone. If the red light comes on, we can all hear you. That's it. That's working. Thank you. Over to you.
So good evening. I'm a 6th form student concerned about climate change, and I'm speaking on behalf of Climate Action West Northamptonshire, also known as CON. Firstly, I'd like to say that both the estate and the construction and maintenance strategies look like brilliant steps towards the Council's 2030 target. I really hope that you will approve them to continue the great progress made by passing the climate emergency motion at the last full council meeting. I also hope that you will ensure that these steps and strategies, if approved, are clearly communicated with the public. This will demonstrate the Council's commitment to taking action to tackle the climate and ecological emergency. I would also like to urge the Council to incorporate these strategies into a wider published action plan, similar to those at the end of the strategies, and to publish regular progress updates. This will clearly break down the steps the Council will take to reach its 2030 and 2045 targets. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for your comments. Next speaker is Councillor Harris. Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you. I welcome these reports. I think on broad purposes, they're very positive, and I'm extremely grateful that we had the opportunity to see these as a sustainability group members ahead of publication and coming to Cabinet, which I hope we will see as a continual pattern moving forward. I just wanted to make a couple of observations about the report itself, but a couple of broader points, if I may. I know that not necessarily all of our councillors are probably on the same page when it comes to this particular issue, but I think, and we're probably going to hear from one of them shortly, I would imagine, I think it's important we recognise it's not a cost neutral scenario. It's not an option to do nothing, whatever we might like and whatever we might say. There's plenty of examples of estimates around the cost of GDP rising from 1.1% currently to deal with climate damages as potentially going as high as 7.4% by the year 2100. So we either face the issue of the cost down the line or we do something with it now. There's a lot of evidence that shows that by already missing out on moving quickly as a general society, the UK's households are probably paying somewhere around £2,100 more than they need had we've already accelerated the move towards green energy. And I would refer anybody, if they choose to look at the London School of Economics report, which makes it very clear that a successful and orderly transition of the economy will realise more benefits and improve resource efficiency for businesses and households, and more importantly, perhaps a wider health co-benefit. We've already talked about some health issues on tonight's Cabinet meeting, and I think it's very easy to dismiss those and not think about the benefits of a transition to green energy and a focus on climate that moves us away eventually from fossil fuel. I recognise that the report very clearly in 1.4 does suggest and indicate that this is not a full business case, and each of those areas we've looked at carefully and individually, and I think that's something that we need to bear in mind. It's not a fully costed basis. From my point of view, it sets a very clear roadmap, which I think is the right roadmap. It's the roadmap that the Council has signed up to as a whole, so I fully endorse that. My one little caveat is slight caution around the discussion in the document on use of biomass. There's much debate about biomass as to whether, in fact, it is green or not green. In fact, there was a legal case that started yesterday against the government on a technical issue as to whether or not it is, in fact, green energy. So I believe that's not our priority focus, but I just thought I would raise it as point of that particular point. I'd also like to thank Oriane. It's always nice to hear somebody from the public coming and speaking Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Agree with all your comments. And these I've heard about biomass too. And these things are evolving, aren't they? It sets out a sense of direction here. Next, we've got Councillor Randall. Wendy, you're happy? So final speaker on this, Councillor McCord. Ian, over to you.
Well, I won't disappoint Jonathan. Either of you. Thank you, Chairman. As we approach Christmas, many are writing a letter to Santa Claus, and it looks from reading these documents that that's what we have here. And like all letters to Santa Claus, there's nothing that can really be argued with. We all want a long list of items which in themselves are not objectionable. In the most part, what is suggested is nothing more than a statement of the bleeding obvious. Efficiency measures that we could all aspire to. But like any letter to Santa Claus, the cost is ignored. That'll be picked up by, well, Santa Claus, of course. Many Maybe it's more a bit like the Christmas jumper that reads, "Dear Santa, I can explain." So back here in the real world, there does need to be costs and budgets attached to the shopping list of desires. And these documents have no figures or costs attached, as everyone has freely admitted. Now, sorry, that's not quite true. I did find one figure in there in the tree planting section, a figure of 19.1 million was mentioned. And then we disappoint all the tree huggers by saying this won't happen. This is another report that is full of magical thinking and does not tackle the simple challenge of how do you pay for your dash to net zero. In the sustainability report that was brought to Cabinet a few weeks back, the NPH properties were stated at 12 to 30,000 each, depending on their construction or whatever. That's a total bill of 150 to 300 million, but I think was excluded from this report. This supposed strategy then talks about doing a survey for, say, this building and other buildings. So why, after having set the net zero target, has that not been done already? When will all the schools be surveyed? When will all the leisure centres be assessed? And more importantly, when are we to be given the bill and the plan to pay for it? I keep asking about this time and time again. It's about time the council either stated explicitly what this net zero programme will cost and how it plans to pay for it, or abandon the target in favour of a common sense approach that is affordable and not driven by dogma and the need to appease the vested interests. I know it's going to be adopted, so fair enough. But I tell you what, I'll finish where I started. Season's greetings to you all.
Thank you. Thank you for making some points in, maybe good humour. Yeah, I mean, some general observations. So the MPH homes are in the 2045 target, a scope outside of our own operation. That's a slight stretch, but we believe that we share the responsibility for those with the homeowner. We know we've got an awful lot of work to do. To some extent, we're looking for technology to come along and help us, and the cost of massive insulation to come down too. So it is a roadmap. Each individual project has to stack up on its own merit. Each individual project has to be costed. This is a strong guide. It's a set of principles, and a set of principles made publicly so that we feel a public commitment to stick to them, but it won't necessarily dictate exactly what happens on every single piece of development or whatever. We're expressing strong principles. And you know, a little while ago when we first set the 2030 target, we probably did set it as dogma. We set it simply because we thought it was important to do, and we hadn't got a clue how we're going to achieve it. The good news is now we have a half decent roadmap that looks as though it's going to get us to the 2030 target. The biggie is the 2045, because that involves every one of our 425,000 residents plus our businesses. So that really is going to be tough and stretching. But as I say, we didn't know how we're going to achieve 2030 when we first set that. So let's hope we come up with the answers to 2045 as well. That was the last of our speakers. Thank you for the comments that you made there. Does anybody on camera have any comments they want to make on this? Sorry, you were going to come in, Adam. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think there's an awful lot of important principles and signposts set out in the report. And again, I'd like to thank Ms. Naywood, especially for her comments. It's always welcome to hear from Climate Action West Northants, and yeah, comforting to get their seal of approval on a strategic document such as this. Being only November the 14th, I think it's a little early to be mentioning the C word, but I think this is less a letter to Father Christmas than a sign that we've listened to the ghost of Christmas yet to come, and we're taking the appropriate steps to ensure that actually we can build a better and more sustainable future. There's many of the steps set out in these documents that are entirely sensible, entirely economically prudent. There are some that I look at the potential price tag and I gulp a little bit, but as technologies develop and as we learn more about what's realistic, hopefully those can be mitigated, and we'll take best practice from around the country and indeed around the world and implement them here in West Northamptonshire. But it's important that we scope out what's possible and what our options are. I think these documents do that, and so I'm happy to endorse them here tonight, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments, Adam. Very much appreciated. Anybody else, comments or questions? You, Stuart, you weren't going to chip in there, were you? You're looking as though you might do. No, you don't. I'm not asking you to. I thought perhaps you were indicating that you would.
Again, just to echo some of Adam's points there in terms of in many many of the projects identify here, it's more about, it's as much about efficiency and invest to save as it is about carbon. And that's the beauty of looking at our own estate and our own actions, if you like. Yes, there is a capital sum up front, but the revenue savings, which is the biggest challenge when it comes to council finances, is one which will be a positive in many of these. And if you take the PV, if you look at the LED, etc., there is a real strong case here for on an economic terms as well as on environmental terms. So again, a number of reports will be coming over through cabinet in the coming months, which will really start to put the price tag. And again, many of them will be seen to be economically viable and common sense approach as we go forward. So no, just to reinforce some of those messages. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much, Stuart. Okay, that's great. Further comments or questions? No? Okay, in which case, if I can direct your attention, please, to section 3. The recommendations are asking that the Cabinet approves the estate climate strategy as set out here and approves the construction and maintenance climate strategy. Can I ask you to confirm your agreement? Is it agreed? Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. That takes us on to item 12. This is council tax care leavers discount. The report is in Malcolm's name, being finance related, but we're going to ask Fiona to make the initial comments on this. Fiona, over to you, followed by which, by the way, we have just one speaker, Councillor Randall. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you very much. Those of you who've been around for a while, like myself, will know that I brought the original council tax reduction to council, and we thought it would work at the time, but it turned out to be a little too clunky for our care leavers to operate successfully without quite a large amount of help, which it seems they didn't actually manage to get. So this is a new scheme that will hopefully put that right. So just moving on to that, we recognise that young people leaving care may find the transition of moving into independent accommodation and managing their own finances very challenging. As a result, young people leaving care could easily find themselves in financial difficulties and without the vital support they need, including help with priority bills such as council tax. At present, under the local council tax reduction scheme, care leavers can receive up to 100% support with their council tax, but the scheme is means tested and relies upon care leavers completing a claim form and providing all the required evidence. Often this doesn't happen, and that financial help is then missed. This proposal introduces a local discount paid directly to the council tax account of care leavers aged between 18 to 21. At 21, care leavers can apply for local council tax reduction of up to 100% of their council tax, so preventing that financial cliff edge. As well as providing much needed support for care leavers, the discount is administratively more efficient and cost effective for the council. And I'd like to thank our officer, Belinda Green, for all the help that she has given me on this piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Malcolm, I think Fiona said it all, really. Did you want to add anything?
Nothing to add, Chair, thanks.
Thank you. In which case, let's go to our one speaker, which is Councillor Randall. Wendy?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I welcome the report. I welcome anything that makes things a lot simpler, which this definitely has done. So thank you.
Jolly good. Okay, any other comments, questions from the Cabinet? No, in which case recommendations always are at section 3. Can I ask you to confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 13. This is with Malcolm, similar subject, local council tax reduction scheme. Once Malcolm's introduced this with 3 speakers, Councillor Harris, Councillor Holland-Delamere and Councillor Randall. So Malcolm, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, this is the shortest paper on the agenda tonight, so I'm not going to take very long over it. What this is a continuum of what we've already had for several years now, and it's a local council tax reduction scheme. We have to put one in by January the 31st each year, and it's a year-on-year thing, and it's worked rather well in the past, I believe. It rises in percentage terms, so it's really more of the same. So very little to add other than that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're all keen to maintain the same level of support to those who need support with their council tax. And let's then move to our speakers. First of all, Councillor Harris. Jonathan, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll speak from here if I may, because
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, why not?
It's just to say again, I endorse the fact that we've maintained this at the same level, so I very much welcome that. On a separate but related point, we had a separate hardship fund that sat alongside, and I understand the last time I received an update on that, there was around 70,000-ish left in that pot, I believe. So my question is there any funds still left in the hardship fund, and will we be in a position to be able to make any further provision for a hardship fund for the future? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Did you want to come back on that, Malcolm, or wait
Yes,
till the
I'll
end?
come back straight away before I forget. I believe just to confirm with Martin here, there is something left, but we haven't got a figure to hand. So worth investigating. Yeah, well, it's a carry forward thing, and the budget's not set for next year yet, but we'll see where we go.
Great, thank you. Keith, over to you.
Sorry, there was a little bit of miscommunication. Actually, my comment was on the previous item.
Oh, okay.
As someone who worked in debt collection, just want some reassurance that the care leavers don't get it automatically carried forward to when they do no longer qualify and end up with a debt and being pursued for debts, because I'm conscious of the fact that we don't want to put someone in a position where we support them and then the following year, because we don't have robust systems in place, someone's given something automatically when they're not entitled to it. I know it's something that's frequently a problem with automated systems and processes.
Yeah. I think we can confirm the principle is it's just not payable. It's not carried forward. And in the event we try to pursue them for that, that would be a mistake on our part. But the policy is that it's just not payable. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Finally, Councillor Randall. Wendy, over to you.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Any other comments, questions from the Cabinet at all on item 13? No. Okay, fairly straightforward. I think the recommendations are at section 3. Can you confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 14. This is Public Spaces Protection Order for Emporium Way. David will introduce this report, following which we have two speakers, Councillor Beardsworth and Councillor Randall. David, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The report is looking to get Cabinet's approval for the closing of Emporium Way. I don't know if all members are familiar with it. It's a walkway which is located at the top of the Market Square in Northampton. It's sort of a shortcut through to Sheep Street and Marehold. It's unfortunately attracted a lot of illicit activities over the years, and over the past 6 months, the police have noted a significant rise in crime and antisocial behaviour. And this includes 2 serious sexual offences, and to such the illicit behaviours have resulted in additional police presence having to be introduced. So we're seeking to introduce a public spaces protection order to close Emporium Way for at least for the period where the Market Square is whilst it's being redeveloped. So that's it, really pretty straightforward and sensible move. Thank you, Chair.
Jolly good. Thank you, David. Two speakers. We've got Councillor Beardsworth, Councillor Randall. Sally, over to you.
Do you mind if I stay here, Chair?
No, let's do that by all means.
Thank you very much. I have a little bit of a problem with that, because we've already shut one down in the bottom of Bridge Street, and that caused quite a lot of performance. And some of the suggestions that we've made here, I don't see why we shouldn't be doing something with it to make it a better space. It's not going to be closed permanently because it's going to be opened up when the Market Square is there. And obviously the increase of crime probably is because the Market Square isn't there at the moment. So I would like to see it retained, but the ability to close it in hours of darkness, if that was possible, because people do use it as a walk through to Sheep Street and to the Marehold car park and places like that. And I just think sometimes we get a bit heavy-handed with these closures. when we're not going to close it permanently, and it is because the market isn't there anymore, because the market traders would be on the scene if there was anything problem going on with that. So I just wondered if it would be easier just to have some nice gates put up there and somebody to lock it at night. And then people are safe in the hours of darkness. People can use it then in the daytime, and if people don't feel safe, they don't have to use it. There are alternative routes.
Okay, thank you, Sally. Let's come out then next to Councillor Randall, sorry, Wendy, over to you.
Yes, thank you. I'd like assurances that there is going to still be looked after and not left to become a very shabby, overgrown area. And it really needs looking at after the Market Square is completed. If it's made into a nice walk through that's pleasant, I think, you know, like Councillor Beards was said, you know, it is a well-used walkway. And yes, there has been illegal activities in there, but it's grim. And in fact, if you make somewhere a nice area like they have in other cities, then a lot of that antisocial behaviour stops. So I wouldn't want to see it permanently closed, and I would like to see it maintained in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hand over to David in a second on the sort of safety side. From a regeneration side, we did have the Towns Fund money to regenerate Emporium Way, but actually a higher priority came along with the opportunity to facilitate Market Walk, which was way above that in terms of the consultation response, the public response. That was what people wanted to see. Obviously, it's not forgotten because we're just engaging now a master planner through a competitive process to press on and do a master plan for the whole Greyfriars area, for which this will be a key access. So from a regen point of view, it's certainly not off the agenda. But I'll go back to David, particularly on the safety side. David, any of those points that you want to sweep up?
Yeah, it simply wouldn't be practical to open and close it. And some of the assaults and things have happened during the day. So it's, you know, it's a problem area. As Chair has mentioned, this is part of the master plan for the improvement around Greyfriars. But the consultation as well, if you look at the numbers there, residents and businesses showed 58% were in favour of blocking off Emporium Way. 60% felt that antisocial behaviour and crime are an issue in the walkway, and 36% had witnessed or experienced either one or more issues of antisocial behaviour or crime there. So there's clearly a problem there. Clearly, we need to do something about it. So the short term is we block it off, and it's part of the master plan as an improvement of the town centre itself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions at all from Cabinet? Oh, sorry, Matt, over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add my support to what David's just said. A couple of years ago, I witnessed an assault in Emporium Way in broad daylight, and I think the best thing is what we're doing with it now, with a view to look into future regeneration to, you know, revamp that whole area you were talking about, Leader. So I'm very happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Any other comments, questions at all? No, in which case the recommendations are always section 3. Can you confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Good. Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 15. This is Active Travel Fund 4, connecting the active core to access for all in the Northampton area. This is with Phil, following which we have 2 speakers, Councillor Harris, then Councillor Beardsworth. Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A relatively straightforward report because the Access for All scheme incorporated this active travel proposal in it when it came to came before us in before council in January. So it has been before us before. The scheme has now been awarded funding, and this report seeks to note the funding and to delegate authority to the director in consultation with myself to actually implement the scheme. The new traffic-free route that this will deliver will enable residents living in the Far Cotton area and the town centre to connect with employment opportunities in Brackmills as and cycle, as well as connecting with other amenities. The scheme involves a 1,300-metre traffic-free route accessible for walking, wheeling and cycling at Delapre Abbey, secure cycle parking facilities, wayfinding, directional signage, benches and information boards. So it is quite a significant scheme, but to actually give the residents of Far Cotton and the town centre greater connectivity and easier connectivity at low cost and low carbon with Brackmills is to be welcomed. This, as I say, the scheme has been fully funded through Active Travel Fund Tranche 4, and we've been awarded £642,871 in capital, and there's also 30,443 revenue to support monitoring and evaluation. So it's we've got the money. I wish to accept that, and I hope Cabinet will agree, and that we delegate to Stuart the delivery of the scheme in consultation with myself.
Jolly good. Thank you, Phil. So 2 speakers, Councillor Harris first of all, then Councillor Beardsworth. Jonathan. You're okay. You're past just Jonathan's comment. Thank you, Sally. That's appreciated.
Thank you, Chair. This report is, of course, extremely welcome. The only shame or disappointment, of course, that it's already within a traffic-free route, and I accept the reasons behind that. But I hope that we can, through the development of the transport plan, which is work that's commenced, start to find a real political will and passion collectively to look at how we tackle this issue for people to be safe within mainstream roads. And I know we've had some challenge and pushback on one of the experiments during COVID on that, but I think that shouldn't put us off trying to focus on how we do further work on that. Specifically, when the government's own target is to increase active travel by 46% by 2025, which I believe it refers to in the report. So that's quite a steep target. A couple of other points. We do seem to be relatively slow on bringing forward our active travel work for whatever reason. I think some of it might be officer capacity potentially. I know that the LC whip for Daventry was completed, I believe, just before Christmas last year, and I'm led to believe that it's hopefully out for consultation by the end of November. It would be useful to understand if that is correct on a timing point of view. There are some really good examples of towns that have really embraced the active travel energy and focus, and Leicester is one of those on our doorstep, and it's probably worth a good old visit and a walk around to get a sense of some of those. And I think the other point that we need to make on this is that there is a very clear connection that we need to make with our health and wellbeing strategy. You know, this is very much a focus about keeping people active, whether that's through walking or through cycling. And there is a report that the government, the Chief Medical Officer, I believe, has written into his annual report, which is probably worth all Cabinet members having a browse through at some stage. I think it has a key role to play, not only in terms of potentially air quality issues, but certainly in terms of physical health. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. So Sally's kind of chosen not to speak. All points covered. Back to you, Phil, if there's any of those points you want to comment on. Perhaps Stuart.
Well, Chairman, I mean, I hear what's said about the transport plan. Obviously, we're working up a transport plan for West Northamptonshire. Active travel will feature in that. Yes, I'm sorry we've been a bit slow in getting these things moving. We are getting up to strength and moving things forward. We've done a lot of work working with the residents of Brackley and Towcester and Daventry, particularly on the LC whips, and we're working up proposals through that, what it is that local people want from active travel. We know, for example, there's a very keen desire to see Brackley connected to Silverstone, and I think there's a similar a view for Towcester to be connected to Silverstone. Obviously, Brackley's further ahead than anywhere, but we're in a difficult position until the issue of the A43 overbridge of HS2 is delivered, when we can actually see what's on the ground and what we can deliver. But as soon as that's done, it's starting, we should get a good idea within the next 12 months. We'll be able to really push that forward. Northampton has perhaps been a little bit further because that was where the county council decided to invest and apply for funding. And we have been delivering basically on that legacy project, which is the Abington Active Travel Scheme, which it still isn't there yet because there's issues surrounding the King Edward Road junction that need to be resolved. And we're looking at that very closely, but it is going in the right direction, albeit a bit slowly, but it will be delivered in the near future. Active travel is important. We're working on the LC whips. This will bring up the schemes that we will come forward and then bid for funding in order to deliver.
Thanks very much for your comments, Phil. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? Adam, you can chip in there.
Thank you. Just a brief comment, Chairman, to say that obviously this scheme passes through the grounds of Delapre Abbey, and I know that the leadership at Delapre Abbey and indeed the members of the Delapre Abbey Preservation Trust are very excited about seeing this scheme come to fruition on a larger scale. I think it's a really important piece of work in connecting up a key employment site to the residential areas that Councillor Larratt mentions. Whether it's through choices to take on a more environmentally friendly form of transport, or people who simply don't have other options to drive to employment sites. It's important that we open up the range of options, and this does just that. So happy to support it, and like others, look forward to seeing similar schemes come forward, not only in Northampton but throughout the rest of the district.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else? Matt?
Yeah, just to mention the active travel points around being healthy are all picked up in our health and wellbeing strategy. And there was excuse me, there was a report come out from the Chief Medical Officer last week about healthy aging, and that's all work that we've already recognised and picked up in our health and wellbeing strategy. So just to concur with some of those points that Councillor Harris mentioned.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matt. Do you want to come back in?
Can I just come back on Adam's point, because I think that's very, very important. What we've got, particularly around Northampton, is we've got disconnected employment areas. For example, Panatoni Park has very good cycling, walking facilities, but it doesn't connect through to Northampton. Brackmills does, but it doesn't connect through to the town of Far Cotton. So I think what we're looking at in Northampton is actually joining up what we've already got, so we can utilise the new facilities that are coming about us by way of development. I mean, for example, the Segro freight terminal, excellent facilities being put in there, even connecting the area Northampton to road. So I think, there's real areas where we really need to look and connect up what we've got to enable people to do that full journey, whether it's from Northampton, Kingsthorpe, or wherever through to Panatoni Park, but also bringing people in the other direction as well. So from Weedon to Panatoni Park or whatever. So there's a lot to do on connecting up. And I think Adam's point is absolutely right in ensuring that we can provide that alternative for people to get to and from work.
Yeah, lots of benefits, health and well-being, sustainability, and so on. Absolutely fantastic. Good. Okay. So recommendations section 3, they involve accepting this funding and delegating authority to the director and the cabinet member to make the operational decisions to drive the scheme forward. Can I ask you to confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you. Takes us on to our last report, which is decision taken of the Special Urgency Powers acquisition of former bus depot at St James. This report is in Dan's name, so we'll hand over to Dan in a second. 3 speakers lined up, Councillors Beardsworth, Purser and Randall. Dan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is to notify the Cabinet of the decision taken by the leader to approve the acquisition of the former bus depot in Northampton for a regeneration scheme. Should be said, decisions like this aren't taken lightly and only when there is true urgency. What this report sought to do or seeks to do was to establish a capital budget of 3.3 million for the acquisition of the former bus depot and the buildings at St James, Northampton, and to approve the acquisition of the former bus depot for the delivery of the regeneration scheme. This site has been empty for nearly a decade or over a decade, and was sold to support the development of churches. This site does include more land than when the former NBC sold the site to churches, and they've also acquired further land from Homes England. They've also undertaken further work on the site to include demolition and a level of asbestos removal. We were made aware that other prospective buyers were in the process of offering, and it was under offer for this site. We're looking at doing commercial open storage uses. This would clearly have harmed the area and would not have been a suitable use for this site. We would have had no control of the site had we not stepped in to do something about it. Commercially, it would have cost the council, could have cost the council significantly more money to secure had we entered into a competitive public bidding process. What this does is secure the lands that we can bring forward much needed housing on the site. Working with our planning colleagues and highways, we've been engaging them early to understand and mitigate any impacts that this may have, as well as working with highways, as we understand there may be some questions around that, around the pollution and things like that. I think this was a solid decision that the leader made in conjunction with the rest of us. And I think it's going to be a great positive step forward for that part of the regeneration of Northampton. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dan, probably some further comments to come from me, but meantime, let's hand over to our speakers. So first of all, Councillor Beardsworth. Sally, over to you.
May I stay here, Chair, if that's all right with you?
Yep.
I welcome this because we really need some new housing, and hopefully, as well as affordable, we'll have social housing there as well, because that will make a huge difference to that area for not only supplying homes for people, but to invest in the area itself. But I also want to be aware that it's a very historic site. I can remember when it was a bus depot originally, which we owned as Northampton Borough Council, and when we sold it to build Sixfield Stadium, which we don't own that anymore either. So it's a big history to that building, and there's a lot of wonderful architecture that really needs to be preserved as much as it can. And also maybe some things on site like a bus, you know, and things that we can actually have the history of the place. An old bus would be ideal, that it could be used as a social gathering place or a children's play area or whatever. But I think it's important, and I knew there was a rush to get this done, and I appreciate the fact that I was kept well versed on what was happening. And I know we had to keep it fairly secret because we didn't want to have other bidders coming along and outbidding us. So it is important that we kept this and managed to get the site back, and we can build some houses that for the people of Northampton. Not just, but also I would, apart from affordable, I would like to see social housing as well there, if it's humanly possible. Thank you.
Thank you. We've probably got common ambitions on that. See how viability works and everything. Councillor Purser, Bob, over to you.
If I can speak from here, Chair.
Yeah, let's do
just to appreciate the briefings that you held on it. That's very welcome. I think we do need to recognise that some of the problems that officers have dug us out of here were caused by kind of poor process by the previous Northampton Borough Council and the agreement that there was with churches. And I think there are lessons there for us. We should have had a clawback clause within it, and that was a mistake. It's important as we develop it that we pay homage to the heritage of the site. That's important, but it does provide us with a real opportunity to provide some excellent social and affordable housing. And I hope that we can progress that with all speed. So there's going to be a real challenge between getting a really good design with really high standards and doing it with speed and alacrity because of the needs that we have in the area. So officers have got a real challenge of meeting those two things, a really excellent scheme and in a time frame that means that we get housing as soon as possible on the site. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Councillor Randall, Wendy, to add?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You did give us a briefing on this, but reading this report, there would have been a lot more things that I would have questioned about. So first of all, you know, what we do want to see is we do want to see social and affordable housing built, because we do need to get people off our housing list. So, you know, that is a definite, and it's something that we want to see. But then reading the report, I don't know how much that the site was being marketed for to start with. And I know there was somebody else who was interested in it. But at the top of the report, it says the site value is between 1.5 and 2 million, and we paid 3 million plus costs. So, you know, did we just pay £1 million over when we needn't have done? Like, and as I say, I don't know what.
I don't think you really mean to ask that. Do you? Do you really mean to ask that?
The way the report's
Okay.
written, if you think the public are going to be reading this report, so I'll be asking questions what people will ask of me. So, you know.
Fair enough. Okay. We'll
So,
come back
you
to
know,
it.
just the way it's written. Then it also says about there being a covenant on the site as well from Home England have got a covenant on a part of the site. Well, that confused me a little bit because I didn't know Homes England owned any of that site. And then it goes on to say about the way, if I understand it, is if any of those properties are sold, if the covenant isn't lifted on the part that Home England have got, all profit, 100% of the profit goes over to Home England. So forgive me if I've got that totally wrong, but this is just how I'm reading it. But if it's going to be all social and affordable housing, we haven't got to worry about that because we're not going to be selling them anyway. Or if there were only going to be a few for part buy, I assume it would be on the bit that was not got the covenant on it. So I just want clarity on that. And obviously we've done this hoping that we're going to get these funds. But if we don't, then what's going to happen? Thank you.
Thanks very much. Dan might indulge me, allow me to pop in a couple of these. I think the social and affordable homes is a common ambition. We'd all hope for that. Sadly, these days, any investment of public money needs to effectively wash its own face, and it has to be a viable scheme. And we'll have to find a way of making that viable. That might mean that we're not able to do social. It'd be a real shame because every one of us sitting in this room would rather have social. Please take that as a stated aim on all NPH development. We'd rather go for social rents. It's just not always possible, but that will remain an ambition. In terms of clawback, I think we have learned, Bob, haven't we? We've probably learned more, and these days we wouldn't imagine any lack of clawback. At that time, there was no doubt the jobs were coming almost. It was absolutely certain churches were going to expand, but of course it didn't. So it wasn't as certain as we might have thought, but certainly lessons have been learned along those lines. And I could see us approaching that differently. And I think the architecture, whatever happens here, whilst it has to be developed into something that creates homes or rents or whatever, without a doubt, we've got to look at a way of getting architecture that reflects and preserves and reflects the sort of heritage of the site. It might be that Adam wants to comment on the HCA, but I mean, let's just be absolutely clear on this, because in my view, it's a ridiculous, and actually, frankly, I find it an insulting suggestion. Did we choose to pay £3 million of public money for something that only needed to pay £2 million? The answer, Wendy, is no, we didn't. Who wants to pick up on the HCA and other arrangements? Did you want to chip in on that, Adam, or perhaps Stuart? Did you want to mention, you might want to reflect on the purchase price or the HCA arrangements? Yeah. Yeah.
So again, the valuation is based on housing valuation. Obviously, the other bid was a commercial valuation, and that's what we matched. So just to add to,
thank you, Stuart. That was the bit
clarity and transparency of that particular point. I think Councillor Randall almost answered her own question in terms of the HCA. Our ambition is to put housing on there. The covenant is all about making sure that we see housing delivered on that site. So again, we don't see the covenant as being a challenge or a barrier. We've had discussions with HCA, Homes England, in terms of future funding. And again, this is what they're looking for throughout the country: brownfield redevelopment to bring back into use for affordable housing. And I use the word affordable because that is something that we're more confident about delivering than social, which has got different connotations and different grant issues and challenges in terms of delivering. So we continue those conversations. I certainly accept Bob's challenge in terms of delivering quality, delivering sustainability, delivering homes. Timescales will depend on some of the grants that we're currently talking about and some of the processes that we need to go through, but speed, absolutely. The challenge that we've got from Cabinet colleagues is exactly around that as well. Now we've got the site, let's make sure that it's utilised in the best possible way for not just the residents, but the businesses in that area. It will bring sustainability for the many businesses in that particular area as well. We've obviously got to go through planning, we've got to go through the grant processes, but we're very confident at this stage, given the conversations we've already had with Homes England, that we'll have a viable site on which we can deliver on that. We've just got to go through those processes now and make sure we deliver on those promises. Is that?
Thank you, Stuart. Yeah, really helpful. Anybody else want to comment at all? Adam, you're going to come in on the housing side, perhaps?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And just to pick up on a couple of the comments, grateful to Councillor Beardsworth for her generosity and thanking the leader especially for keeping opposition parties well versed throughout this. I think that kiboshes some of the more disingenuous statements fed to the media about the process around this acquisition. Councillor Purser thanked in a manner the officers who have managed to make this a reality. And it goes without saying that without our officers doing the heavy lifting, nothing happens at a council of any political persuasion. But being no doubt that without the political will of the leader, of myself as a cabinet member for housing, and of the rest of the cabinet, this would not have happened. And it's, I think, a demonstration of our ironclad commitment to deliver more housing to help the people on the housing register that we sit here tonight considering this paper, and the fact that that land now is in the hands of West Northamptonshire Council will be used to deliver houses to help people on that housing register, and will help to regenerate a part of Northampton that will benefit from regeneration. We've already made the commitment to liaise with members not only in the Sixfields ward, which is where the site is located, but also on the opposite side of the road, because it's right on the boundary, with the members of Dallington Spencer ward. I think the complications that are inherent within any development will fall largely on residents within the Sixfields ward. There's a lot of terraced housing at the rear of the site, and there may be some complications around the build project that we need to have a dialogue with residents around, and especially through the planning process. There is a planning process to go through, and we'll pick up residents' concerns during that. The benefits of the project, we hope, will flow outward from the site and benefit residents both within the Sixfields ward, the Dallington Spencer ward, and in the wider area. I think we need to be realistic about what can be delivered on the site. We're utterly committed to preserving the architectural heritage of that site. That goes without saying. There's listed building concerns to start off with. When you start talking about putting buses on there and what have you just need to be mindful of the fact that any space that's taken up means that there are less units of housing going onto the site, which means that viability reduces, and that then has a knock-on effect on whether or not you can deliver social housing. So just something to be considered of. We will go as far as possible in being loyal and honest to the historic nature of that site. We know its heritage significance for Northampton. We already had a discussion around the potential future designs of the site and how we can incorporate those ambitions. But I think this is exciting. I think this is, as I said before, it's a demonstration of just how committed we are to delivering for the people on the housing waiting list, and I look forward to seeing the project delivered.
Absolutely. A couple of people coming in. Matt, you were going to comment, I think.
Yeah, just to reiterate my support for this decision, leader. I think it's a good decision. Again, that site has been vacant for a long time, and I'm glad we've got that ambition to provide housing on there. And I would like to call, as has been mentioned, that we acknowledge in some form the architectural, the industrial architectural use of previous use of the site, which was a part 100 years ago. St James was one of the industrial hubs of Northampton. So just to reiterate that, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Matt. And Phil, you were going to comment?
I'd endorse those comments of Matt, but I would just like to take issue with something Councillor Beardsworth said when she said about selling the bus company to Stagecoach. And it talks in the report about on the sale of the Northampton Bus Company, which was Northampton Transport Limited, it passed the ownership of Stagecoach. As a director of Northampton Transport Limited at the time of the sale, we didn't sell it to Stagecoach, we sold it to First Bus. So this is totally wrong. And I just thought I'd point that out. Yes, it was sold. It was sold under the Labour administration. But had we a bus company today of our own, it would be a hell of a lot easier to deliver some of the bus services that people are crying out for. So it was a great shame it was ever sold off in the first place. But there we are. But let's be honest, it was First Bus, not Stagecoach, just for accuracy.
Thank you for that correction to the report. It corrects the history, doesn't affect the recommendations. That's the good news. So I think at that point, other than the fact that I slightly hijacked, we've all been involved in this. Dan's report, of course. Dan, did you have anything further you wanted to add? Have we covered it all? Thank you very much. In which case, recommendations are that Cabinet note the decision. There was a leadership decision in my absence on the particular time of that. Adam signed the decision. Can I just ask you to confirm the noting? You agree the recommendations? Agreed? Thank you very much. That concludes the last item. Thank you very much indeed for all of your comments this evening and for all the speakers who came along to speak. Thank you.